Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is a man who many people know. His name is Joe Queenin. He is the unelected, unofficial mayor of Derby Line. He's here today to talk about a recent trip that he and I took to the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Morning, Scott.
Hey, that was quite a trip we went on.
That trip is something that I don't know how many years I have left, but I will never forget it. And I just had no idea. I can't explain in the right way just what a trip it was, right, what it meant. And I said to many people, they said, well, how did it go? I said, well, do you ever have tears come down? And they just flow, and they did. It was fantastic, fantastic.
You know, I've been there. I went there 10 years ago, shortly after it opened, and it was phenomenal back then. But it's still just so beautiful.
Yes, it is, and I had never been there, and that was the thing of it. And to get off that bus there and to be greeted like we were, and everybody around shaking your hand, patting you on the back. And when I said to somebody, well, I know, but that was a long time ago. They said, never mind how long it was. They said, we appreciate what you did. And then we went down to the monument, and I just was agog. Right. I guess that's the word to use, because all the different monuments there, and the inscriptions by scriptures or whatever by President Roosevelt and Truman and so forth, and to see all the monuments like the Pacific side, the Europe side, and to be able to sit down and have a picture taken of myself at the Okinawan stone.
Yeah, because you were at Okinawa.
And I was there, that's for sure.
You know that a lot of people think, when they think of beach landings, they think of D-Day.
That's right.
But Normandy. But you had quite a landing there as well.
We landed on the north side. And it was April 1st in 1945. I think that year it was Easter Sunday too, if I remember right. But anyway, that's the day we landed. And when you go ashore and you are expecting everything to blow sky high, and you're going to be hitting down, and nothing's happening.
Kind of like you expected, like D-Day. Like we know now
that's
of
right.
D-Day, because that's where they were blowing. They were shooting at your buddy Eddie Prano as he was
right.
as he was shipping people in, but that didn't happen at Okinawa.
That didn't happen, and that was the biggest worry we have, really, because everything was so kind of quiet and peaceful. We were all waiting to see what the big blast is going to be that comes at us, and as we continued moving out, nothing was happening, and it gets scarier by the minute, as you might say. And then eventually, I think it was probably 8 or 9 days, maybe, we were up in the north, and the skipper was gone for the day, and when he came back at the end of the day, he said, we will mount up in the morning and head south. And that's when we headed south, and we stopped. Our first stop was at Machinado Airstrip, and then from there we moved on through Naha, up through Sugarloaf, Shuri Castle, the whole shmoo. That was hell. So.
And that's where you started meeting the enemy.
That's right.
Now, I've seen a lot of documentaries on the landing at D-Day, and I've seen the ships. I've interviewed Eddie, and so I know how many airplanes were there and how many ships. What did it look like when you were landing on Omaha? No, when you were landing on Okinawa.
Well, when we were landing, the only thing we had, and this is in the 6th Division, Marine Corps 6th Division book, of this plane that flew over on this I think it was Yontan airstrip. And we were all agog. We didn't know we knew it was a Jap plane, but what was he doing flying over around us? And that's the one that landed.
Right.
And had no idea at all that there was no friendly troops there. When he got out and reached for his gat, then he was done.
Oh, that was after you had secured
We
the
moved
airbase.
in.
But what about when you landed? Was there a huge armada that landed?
Oh yes, yeah. We came off of LSDs with the landing craft, and there was just a ship after ship after ship landing, coming up, moving up onto the shore. And I saw I'm trying to think where it was, a picture of, just showed the shores. I can remember it to this day. It was like going along, and you don't know what's happening, and you come off the coral onto the beach and the sand and the green. The green, it was more or less like around here, and I can still see that sand on the shores, as you might say. And as we moved up in, and nothing was happening, we'd run into maybe 4 or 5 at a time or something like that. But the people the civilians were all gone.
Right.
And then we found out why afterwards,
Right.
that they had been convinced by the Japanese that we were going to kill them all.
Right.
And then they had the suicide cliffs, as everybody's familiar with.
Right, where they were
And
jumping,
which was-
where the civilians were jumping
They
off the
jumped
cliff
the
because
cliff.
they thought you guys were going to kill them.
That's right. And they had all kinds of stories how we would catch them and lay them on the roads, the dirt roads, and run over them with tanks and this type of thing. And that was, but other than that, I mean, it was just kind of scary because you didn't know when you went around one corner what was going to be greeting you, and there was nothing. And then when we went down to the southern end, then we knew what was greeting us.
And you had already had your taste of war a little bit. You were at Bougainville beforehand.
right.
And what
Yeah.
was Bougainville like?
Bougainville, I guess I can't say it over the air probably, because it was the scrubbiest, lousiest, thick jungle that you could get, I think. And you were usually slocking around in the water around halfway up to your shins, and you're batting off insects, and you're trying to see the Japs through the jungle. And it was just lousy. It was a terrible war.
So,
But there, I got to say too, that my friends, the Seabees, were right there with us, and they didn't have too many arms those days. Finally, I can remember they were saying how they finally authorized them to have weapons,
right.
and they were always there right with us.
So, what was it like the first? You know, you see on TV somebody shooting, you know, people shooting at each other. Here you were, little town Derby line boy. What was it like on Bougainville the first time somebody took a shot at you?
Well, I think the first time they took a shot at you, and you didn't get hit, you were thanking everybody, and you were down and you were just holding your head down, and when you did, you were either in mud or water or whatever.
Right.
But it's quite a feeling because all of a sudden you realize if you did get hit, that could be the end.
Right.
And you didn't want it to end, your life to end that way.
Right. All right, now let's back up a little bit. We've in previous shows we've talked a little bit about your life. You moved here when you were 13 from
About 14.
Yeah, 14. When you were orphaned and you came up here with your brother Hugh,
Yeah.
and then you ended up graduating from Newport High. Then you enlisted in the military, but let's listen to this and see if you recognize this speech.
Senators and representatives, I have the distinguished honor of presenting the President of the United States.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense, but always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. I believe that I interpret the will of the Congress and of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us. Hostilities exist. There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph. So help us God. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
That was the speech that President Roosevelt gave following the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Now, there are some things in our life we never forget. Do you remember where you were when you heard that speech, or when you heard that Pearl Harbor had been bombed, or both?
When I heard that Pearl Harbor was bombed, I'm thinking, what is going on? Because I was standing outside the Royal Cafe in Newport on the main street. I probably just had some breakfast. It was Sunday, and it was a damp morning. And all of a sudden, 2 or 3 people combined, they got to talking about it. Well, what is this? Where was this? Nobody's, paid much attention like to Pearl Harbor. They didn't realize how big a place it was and what it was meant to be. But that's where I was that day. And I always remember when President Roosevelt gave his speech, and in Newport here, whatever day it was. But I can still almost hear his voice. Recollect that voice of his, that somber voice of Day of Infamy. And I don't think he'll ever forget it.
Yeah, and I was reading up on that speech, is some people didn't want him to give that specific one, whereas I think, even though I wasn't even a dream at that point of being alive, you hear it and you just can't, it just kind of like echoes through you. When you heard that speech, did you know you were military bound?
Yes, because when the whole speech itself, without knowing it line for line, the way he gave it, and with that voice, I can still hear that voice to the point where it was that soft tone, but it meant that anger zone in there, but it was soft. And then I said, to yourself, well, that means things have got to happen. At that time, I was kind of familiar with the military because my brother had been in a reserve officer in the Army for a few years before he came aboard at the Border Patrol. And as a kid, when we were trying to stay together for about a year, I used to go down to the National Guard Armory and while he drilled, and I could drill with him. I couldn't carry a weapon, but I could drill. So everything I was geared for.
So how come you decided to join the Marines and not the Army then?
Well, I had a fella down home, his name was Fritz Ryan. And Fritz was one of these likable guys. Everybody would like him in the world. He always had a laugh, always had a joke, and he would do anything for anybody, help anybody. And he and another fellow named Billy Sumner, I knew them both, and they were pretty good athletes. And I kind of had a what do you want to call it, a liking for the way and means and their athletic ability. And they both got killed on Guadalcanal.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And when that happened, I don't know, I guess it hit 2 or 3 of us, and I said one day to the guys, I had gone back down to my class reunion down there. They wanted me down. That's how I happened to be down there. And then I said to a couple of the guys, I says, I'm going to join the Marine Corps tomorrow. The 3 of us were supposed to meet at the Common at 8, and I showed up, and the other 2 didn't. Well, one of them wouldn't have made it because he had asthma anyway. The other fellow went in the Navy Air Force, so. I went in, I joined in the Fargo building in Boston, and I had to wait about a month and a half because there was so many troops at Parris Island, they didn't have room. So they had to move out the next platoon out, and they could bring some more in, and that was what we did.
Right. And I think you said that they kind of expedited you through training just because they needed
that
you.
They did. They needed, they had, so much was going on, and they needed the troops, and they had extras coming in, so we moved out. We were shot probably by maybe 3 weeks of a regular tour of what you normally would go through. Right. But we went through enough. But it was an everlasting lesson, and to this day, I still.
Without going too much into the battle, we've talked about that other times, and but you know what? A lot of people, if you watch TV, when you see war, it almost glorifies war. Oh. And every veteran I have spoken to who has been in combat, they will tell you there's nothing glorious about it. And every single one I talk to know that they had to kill, but they don't feel good that they had to kill. Like, I know when you look at I know you still are touched by the fact that the flag that I helped you actually get transcribed, knowing that you had to do what you had to do, still bothers you.
Yes, it does. And the fact being that he was probably my age, he was doing what I was doing for my country. And here are 2 of us, and I happen to be the lucky one. And yet it sends a thought through your body, through your mind that, this is really a different situation altogether.
Was it on Sugarloaf Hill?
It was on near the Nahar airstrip, down through Nahar. Yeah.
Right. And I still remember your reaction, because I remember you got teared up when we had it transcribed at your request. Basically, what it said was it was from the family. Right. There was writing on it from his family, from his grandparents, and from his classmates, wishing him well, and basically, thank you for serving your emperor. That's good. And they had his name, Inabar or something.
That was it. I think Iabar, I think.
Okay, now let's go up to the monument. It was made 10 years ago, and I remember my family and I helped raise money to bring a busload down, and you really wanted to go.
Yeah.
Well, busload World War II veteran, but
Yeah.
at that time, your beloved, now deceased wife, Bev, was going through a lot of health problems, but you really wanted to go.
I did. I never forgot the fact that I had the chance, but I couldn't, and I could understand the point. My wife was not feeling good. But then when you said to me one day, are you still thinking about you'd like to go? And that's all I needed.
Right.
And I think you remember what I said.
Yep.
Yes, I do want to go.
Yeah, and I know you said if you died doing it, you died a happy man.
Yeah.
But to the viewers, what we did was I actually arranged what they call an honor flight. An honor flight, what it is it allows World War II veterans, currently World War II veterans, then eventually it'll go up to Korean War veterans and probably Vietnam veterans, but currently they're World War II veterans can sign up for honor flights, and they can make these trips with a group. It's totally free to the veteran, and then the person who goes along, and in my case, in Joe's case, I was his escort, and I had to pay, but it's worth every penny of it. They have a number of flights each year. Vermont, we actually went on the first Vermont flight, correct?
That was the first Vermont honor flight.
There's been other Vermonters who've gone on these honor flights, but I think they were actually the New York honor flights, and they're the greatest thing there are, and we'll be going into, we'll show some of the pictures, because it wasn't just a trip to the memorial. The memorial was great, but I think Joe will say it was far more than just the flight. Were you expecting what you saw?
No. I certainly wasn't. I expected the fact that we had a group of so many, what was it, about 20
Yeah, about
Vermonters
20.
joining the New York group,
Right.
Albany, New York. But from the start to the finish, I never expected to go see what I saw. And when we got off that bus in Albany and went into that airport, I got to tell you, you remember how it was.
Yeah,
I cried almost like a baby.
Right. But we stayed the night before, and we stayed the night before in Burlington because the bus was taken off at 4 a.m, which would have meant we would have had to leave here at 2. We had a great supper at my daughter and her boyfriend's house in South Burlington, and but then you paced the floor like a cat all night. You were so excited about going. Actually, you know what my worst nightmare was? That we were up so much that we'd probably go back to sleep and sleep right.
Well, I was up and around because I didn't want you to fall asleep, and I knew you probably would. So
yeah. But so
no.
Right.
Scott, you like to get up at 3 a.m.
Oh, I do.
Don't
I
you?
love getting up. All right. Here's the first picture is of the police escort we received to the New. Because the first part of our trip was by bus. We went from South Burlington over to Albany, New York, where we got on a plane. But it wasn't quite that simple. Is we had this just leaving the hotel. It was all
The
pomp and
hotel, right there, come down in the morning, and you had known that we were going to have jackets and hats
Right.
and T-shirts, and we didn't know we were going to have those. I mean, you found out, but just getting those, and then the state police people there, I still have the dogs
Right.
medal that they gave us, and the little basket with the little duties in it, and it was something. And then I have a picture with the local boy, the state police. His name is Hunt.
Yeah, Christian
And
Hunt.
Christian, yeah.
Born, a Coventry boy,
Yeah.
state
So
trooper.
anyway, that was the start. So
Right, and that was really nice. And that's what I kind of, from there we had a number of state troopers escorting our bus, and then we got to the New York border. Then the New York State Police took over. Now I thought that was really nice.
it was, especially when we got to the border, and we got off the bus,
Right.
and we shook hands with the Vermont state troopers, thanking them, And then we shook hands with the New York State Troopers, thanking them for taking us the rest of the way they're going to. And it was just really, it was the thing to do, and it was always, it leaves you a good feeling.
So when we headed out to Albany from when we got into New York, I think you and I were on the same page. We kind of knew, because I knew something was going to happen at the airport. I really did, and I'm sure you did.
Go ahead.
But then we drove in to the yard, and you looked over, and you saw this whole row of motorcycles. All, I mean, dozens and dozens of motorcycles right here. And it still didn't click in. But then you looked out, and what did you see when you're looking out?
Well, as I saw these bikers and the people with the flags and so forth, and they were greeting us in the entrance. And of course, then when we went through inside, it was just like, oh my gosh, it was.
I have a photo of you getting off the bus, because I was like your paparazzi. Everything you did, you have a photo of it. And I have a photo of you getting off the bus, and your jaw is about down to your knees.
And I'm not surprised, because I was that surprised. I knew they said there would be a little celebration in Albany, but this was far from a little celebration.
And those bikers, some of them were probably doctors in their other life. Yeah. Others of them were probably criminals.
Oh yeah.
But they were there that day. They were all members of the Patriot Guard.
They were.
And the thing is interesting about the Patriot Guard is not all of them, but a good share of them are Vietnam veterans who have sworn that there will never be a veteran who is treated the way the Vietnam veterans were treated when they returned home. Right. So they go out of their way to whether it's a funeral, whether it's to provide a barrier of this whack job church group out in Kansas that protests funerals. Right. They are there. And, some of those guys, they were big and burly and bearded, but they were so happy to see all of you.
Well, it was like the one big tall guy put his arm around me, and the next thing I know, I couldn't see anything. He had him right around my eyes. He was so big. And he laughed, but they were so receptive to us and so, just so good to us. It meant so much. And those people, people got to understand, they mean something. They mean good, not bad. They mean good no matter what they are.
Right. And then, of course, we had the speakers and everything, and the school group had the music, and they weren't all Patriot Guard members. There were, because they were so noticeable because they were all dressed in leather.
That's right. And
they had the flags, but then you had dignitaries. Then, as I said, the school group did their music. But this is one of my favorite photos of you with the flag in your hands.
Yeah,
and that's one of my favorite ones.
That's my favorite too, because that was taken. They had the flag ceremony, and they had refolded the flag, and then when you came over, and those three fellas had that flag there, and you said, well, let's get a picture of it with it, which they did. They let me have a picture with them holding that flag, and that means an awful lot to me. That means so much, that picture, right. Really. And those guys were just as receptive. They were good. They were just hard to explain.
And for people to sit here and listen to us and totally think they understand, they can't. If you had come home and just told me what it was like, I would have an idea.
Yeah.
But there was nothing like it.
You would not realize the feeling that went through you.
And I weren't even a World War II veteran, right, so being you.
That's right, but you did. I can remember this. I have a picture, thanks to you, that you took on your disc, and I had it made out, of one of these women. She probably was pretty well along, shaking my hand, and just thanking me. And then I have a picture of one you took with me with a little tot that I was patting on the head,
All right, here's that photo of you talking to the youngster.
That's right.
And that was in Baltimore.
Yeah, no, that was, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that was in Baltimore.
Okay, when we got off in Baltimore, that was where
Yeah.
the whole Pacific Fleet, I think, or the Atlantic Fleet or whatever, seemed to have been there.
Yeah, it just, you know, I get the pictures out and I look at them and I go through the whole thing. I get all the paraphernalia out the bag with all the little doties in it that we got on the airplane and so forth, and it's amazing. And then just the other day, the governor and Ms. Leahy and now Mr. Welch,
Yeah.
he sent me a card the other day. To all of the, not just me, but to all of those involved.
Now,
But it was,
here's a photo of you just as we're going up the escalator in New York, lined with, again, Patriot Guards. But wherever you went, the Patriot Guards lined the entire way.
they did. They were there all the way from the opening of that building to the closing out of getting on that plane. And then we got off the bus, and you still had the Patriots over
Oh,
it.
on the
Oh, yes, yeah.
in Baltimore, though, as I said, it was like it was, you know, the Navy was there, and
Yeah.
they had the Navy people had their children with them. But the one thing about in Baltimore, I don't know if you noticed, wherever you walked in Baltimore, other passengers would just break out into applause because they knew you guys were coming.
That's right. It's just like when we were coming back. You remember, you and I headed for the right exit finally to get on the plane, and as we walked on there, people were sitting there waiting to either take the rest of the room in that flight or another flight. They were clapping when we went by and got on to get on the plane.
Right. You know, the question a couple people asked me, because they didn't know if you were a World War II veteran, because you have found the fountain of youth. You're 91 years old, but there's you know, between you and Lindy Palin, who's also a World War II veteran, but he's your senior, I think, at like 93. The two of you, I don't know what you drink for water, but you never age. And so I had a number of people say, well, is he a World War II veteran? Yeah. Wow, he don't look old enough.
Thank you, well, I guess it's, I live my life in this way, that it's another big feeling.
Right.
It is.
And, you know, for the viewers to realize is, especially those of you who have loved ones who are World War II veterans, or if you're one yourself, if you're not as fit as Joe, that's okay. They'll even bring a nurse and a doctor along. You can be we had people in wheelchairs, we had people on oxygen. I think we had a couple that even came from home, I think one from the military home. They will cater to your every need, all your medical needs. You don't have to be like Joe.
That was very, very impressive to me, to the people that were there, that were given their time to be with these people that needed somebody with them all the time. And when those in the wheelchair didn't have to worry a thing, everybody was taken care of. They were taken care of, and just like you were with me, to see that I didn't go wrong in the big city.
Yeah, and we were also, you know, when we had that secret meeting without you guys, we were told two things. Because you remember how hot it was?
Oh, yeah.
We had to keep making sure that you guys drank all the water,
right,
and that you understood there were facilities there after drinking all that water, so not to worry. But because it was hot down there.
It was, oh boy, it was hot, and I remember they kept saying, be sure you get water, be sure you get water. And we did, and it was hot, though. It was hot. That pool, I looked at it a couple of times, and I would love to just taken a flounder in that thing.
Right.
It was.
Well, here's a photo of you and I together, taken there. You know, that's a photo that I'm always going to cherish. You know, the last time I was there, I remember I have photos with the likes of Pearl Harbor survivor Al Hinton, who I know you knew, and then many of the people I went with the first time are now gone. I expect you have at least 10 years left.
Well, I don't know. I just don't worry. I go from day to day and year to year.
Right.
That's it.
Here's another photo. Like, this is one of my favorites. It's with the it's of the monument with the Washington Monument in the background. That's, I find
That's
that
right.
just to be just a
That is-
beautiful photo.
It is. It is. The photos of my family's looked at those photos. I finally got them, and they are beautiful. Really, and there was that fellow with the Okinawan one.
Yeah.
When we got there, and he said, I was there, and I said to him, where did you land? What spot did you land? South or north, I guess. And he said, no. He says, I went down to south. He says, I was on board ship. I was dropping you guys off and getting out of there, he says. And I'll tell you what I cherish very much, too, is that I have that picture taken with the Okinawan Memorial.
Yeah.
That was I just had a book given to me on the 6th Marine Division, which I'm so glad for. Because the history of the division, and from start to finish, how we went through that campaign, and you go through, you do your job in the campaign, and if you're fortunate, you come out okay, and then you look back and you start to read some of the real stories about the situation, and you say, it was so much different than in many ways. That it was a tough campaign. It was hard. It was lousy, but I don't know why you never seem to have that one feeling of how fierce it was until you start reading the truth about it.
Right.
And the fact that it was out there where it was positioned, and the history of it. If people could read the history of the Okinawan campaign, and that takes in everybody, the Navy, the Army, the Marine Corps, you name it, whoever was involved. If they could just get to read that history, and I'll give it to you so you can you can read it and see just what it was. Because Okinawan was more than a lot of people realize.
That was a horrible battle.
It was.
I just, Billy, for the 70th anniversary of D-Day, I interviewed your buddy, Eddie Pirano, and Eddie will tell you, and see if it's true with you, is Eddie said when he was landing troops onto Omaha Beach and everything was blowing up around him and people were being shot, he said at 17 years old, he said it's a funny thing, at that very moment, he was not scared because he was 17. You weren't going to die. Other people were going to die.
That's right.
And did you ever experience any of that sense of immortality?
I don't know. Sometimes you didn't have time to think about it, really, in a lot of ways. And yet, I just felt also, too, that I'm going to be okay. Yeah, I'm going to be okay. And then, like, somebody said, you're okay if you hold your butt down, and that type of thing. But there were close calls. Yes, there were close
You almost
calls.
got blind. You got temporarily blinded by some shrapnel kicked up some dirt in your eyes.
Yeah, it was. They were firing at us from across a gully, and it was that Okinawan lousy red dirt. And I think what happened was the shell hit the bullet, and when it did, it splattered that stuff up into my eyes, so that right off the bat they started to swell up. So they had the field corpsman had to cut them, slit them, or whatever he did with them to get them to come down, and that could have hit me in the head.
But just think how many you stood there back in June. You were able to be there. Just think of how many people of your comrades never even made it back to this country.
That's exactly right.
Do you ever think anything about them, like your two friends that you mentioned?
Yeah. Matter of fact, I received a letter yesterday from this lady down in Amesbury, Mass. And her husband and I were boot camp buddies together. We spent the first 20 months overseas when they formed the 6th Division out in the islands. For some reason or other, his was Pierce and mine was Queenin, and he went one way and I went the other. And when he went the other way, whatever happened, he got it. So you can't help it. Then you have another fellow. A lot of people remember Art Carney on TV. Well, this guy was almost a perfect replica of Art Carney. that kind of guy from Ohio. And as much as we were told to stay away from caves, for some reason or other, we moved into another slot, and he, I don't know, to this day, he stepped in front of this cave, and the next thing you know, he was gone. And, you know, you can't help but remember those things, your buddies, that these things happen, and like Don Bushman. Don Bushman was on Bougainville, and neither one of us, of course, knew each other until a while ago, know that we were there. And Don was with the Americal Division, I believe it was, and I think he was a radio man, which meant he was probably a scout as well, which was not good. He can tell you the same thing. You lose people that.
And he's actually, is he still planning to go this fall on his
Yeah,
honor flight?
he's hoping to go, yeah.
Because I know I volunteered if he doesn't
Yeah,
have anybody
right.
to serve
right.
as his
Oh, yeah.
escort. I'll
No, he
go
spoke
along
about it. I
with
said,
him.
no, Scott will go with you, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it was my honor to have gone with you because, as I tell people, you might be 91, you're old enough to be my grandfather, but you're one of my best friends. It was such an honor to have been there with you because I look at the monument differently than you do.
Yeah.
Is I look at its beauty. But from being a history person, I understand what it signifies. I understand it at that level, but you understand it from a totally different level.
I think you call it this sadness and happiness together in a way, but sadness is so much, and yet it's so beautiful.
Because you probably
Beauty with sadness, is that
Right.
the way?
right.
Something of that nature.
And here's another photo. This is a photo of all of you World War II people from both the New York and Vermont out in front of the.
That's the one I just made,
Right.
with your help.
Yeah. And you just barely got in that because
Yeah.
I know what happened was we were getting our photos taken with Senator Leahy's staffer.
Right.
And then something happened.
Then there was another couple that were down in that country. They're coming back up to Vermont, over
Right.
to Norwich area, that they had lived there before, and they're coming back. And they took your picture with you and I and Mrs. Leahy's,
Then we
Senator
got
Leahy's man, and then we
got word
Oh.
over there. And
Yeah, we
you
made
got
it.
in- and I think you got in about the time the cameras started snapping.
I think it was a case of a head popping up when they clicked.
Oh, that was about it.
It was close. No.
But then after we left there, because we weren't there that long, an hour or two, but then I knew what was going to come. I knew what was going to come next because I had to help with this a little bit.
Right.
Is each one of us, we had to make sure people in your life knew where you were going, and you had people send you letters, and then mail call came, and you ended up getting this big envelope filled with letters some from home, some from strangers,
Right.
and you probably
I-
still kept that.
I have that at home, and I had two local people from the hospital, Marilyn Barrett and Wendy Franklin.
Yeah.
They both sent really heartwarming letters.
Yeah.
And there's another one from a lady over in Jericho.
Yeah.
And then I had these pieces of paper, about like this, just a piece of paper with this written on, "Thank you for what you did for us." And then another one might say, "Well, thank you very much. We're happy that you would help us." And paper. And I think it says Shrewsbury, Vermont. I gotta go back over, because I gotta start getting out a few thank yous. And then I thought, these are school kids. And there was everything in there. There was a writing pad, there was a Kleenex, there was some hard candy, and it was just fabulous. The whole show. It was. I got even with the group in Albany, I got to thank them, and so it was just. Well, as I've told people when they ask me how it was, I said, it's so hard to describe. It was so grateful.
Now, here's the surprising fact, is we did a lot of living. I mean, that was a 22-hour day, I believe,
Yeah.
from the time we left the motel, got on the bus,
Yeah.
and then returned by bus. I think it was a 22-hour day. I don't know if you slept any on the bus, because I didn't pay attention because I was sleeping.
You were sleeping. No,
but
I didn't sleep.
And so it was a 22-hour day, but to those that might scare you, going that long, I'll tell you, and Joe will tell you, is that 22-hour day probably didn't faze you one bit, did it?
Not a bit.
Because you were so...
I think it was, we came back Sunday, and I think I got showing stuff with my family and talking about it, and probably around Tuesday I began to get tired.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Because you were still running on adrenaline.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was just like sat right there, as I say, you snooze, but you'd been busy with a lot of stuff, and I was just, just happy with everything that was happening, and I just sat there and I thought the day out of just what had taken place, and even to the point of, I was, the people, it just set me, when we came back and we were leaving the airport to get on the bus, and I was so taken up with the people still thanking us.
Yeah.
And if it hadn't been for you, I'd have missed out on getting that nice book of the monument.
Yeah, because when we hopped on, when we were going through the airports, particularly when we landed in Albany, it was already kind of late, and there were still people there celebrating for you.
That's what I've told everybody. I said it's amazing because it was late, and there were still people that were thanking us and shaking our hand, and I've talked to people, and I said, if it hadn't been for Scott, I wouldn't have that nice booklet of the monument. But he got it for me because I was in awe, I guess, against.
I'll tell you, I know I joked to you about this, but you were clapped and shook in hand. You had people clapping for you, shaking your hand. I was a little worried that because your usual hangout is at the Irvin Oil in Derby Line, and I was hoping it weren't going to your head because I didn't know if they'd clap for you and shake your hand every morning you went in now or.
No, but I've had a lot of people come in, people I don't know even, that knew I was going, and through the articles and so forth, and they'd ask how the trip went, and even to, I think it was Sunday, that there was a woman come in, and I don't know who she was, but she knew that I was going, and want to know how it was and so forth, and that's the way it goes, and it's just been fantastic.
And then I have to believe this trip maybe had something to do with, they even made a float for you. Well, they had you in the parade as the unofficial mayor of Derby Line.
Yeah, and that's a funny thing. And they did the girl is the town clerk in Derby Line, and village of Derby Line. So she came in one day and wanted to know if I would ride in a car for them. Well, sure.
You just thought you were riding in an antique car or something.
Just riding something, in an antique car. So, and then the next thing I know, I get down there, and there they got this nice hot rods or whatever you want to call it. What do you call it for the car I was in?
Convertible.
Convertible. And they had these little signs, and they put them on the door, and I had to sit up there, and I slid a few times. I thought I was going down into somebody's lap, but it gives you a good feeling.
Right.
Gives you a good feeling.
Now, you've talked about your secret of age and just not bothering you. Well, here's the thing is, I think Todd Pronto, our producer, could learn a lot from you. Todd's a single guy.
Yeah.
And you were married for 60-something years?
65.
65 years.
Yeah.
But to be realistic, ever since I've known you, you're quite the chick magnet. Everywhere you go, women want to hug you, squeeze you, pinch you, kiss you. What advice do you have for our producer here? Todd's striking out.
I'll say to Todd, don't fight it.
If
Somebody
you
will
could
come
bottle.
in. One woman said at the hospital one day when the girl comes out from over an X-ray that she always gives me a hug.
Yeah.
And They're great. They're a great group there.
If you could bottle your charisma, though,
Oh.
is you could be a millionaire.
I don't know about that, but this day, there was a woman sitting there, and we were talking about volunteering there, and I said how much I did like it, and I do. And then when this girl came out and gave me the hug, then I turned to that woman. I said, "Now you see why I like it here." And she just shook her head. But and it is. It's just like the lady up that was with Dave Price. When we got through, at the end of the parade, she said, "I didn't know you. I mean, people knew you." I said, "Well, it's just one of those things, you know. I've been here a long time. I'm just like whatever."
Right. No, in all seriousness, we talked about you being a chick magnet, but you were madly in love with your wife for 65 years, and you actually met her when you were playing baseball, and you ended up tripping over her bike.
That's right.
And if she can see you today and know how happy you were to finally, what do you think she's thinking?
She would probably look at me and shake her head, laugh, and just shake her head in that happy way.
Yeah, because since her passing, you also took up motorcycle riding on the back of a motorcycle, and I remember you thinking that she'd probably be thinking, "You damn fool, you're going to break your neck."
She would probably try to hitch me to the post so I couldn't get away to go. But that was, of course, that story is and it's something in itself. When I met my wife Bev, and we knew each other casually, as you might say, and when I left, I went down home, as I told you, to go to my own class reunion, and I told her I would be back. Well, for some reason or other, I got back down home, and I hung around. I enlisted, and I had to wait because there were so many going in. They had to make room in the next load of Paris Island. So then I went to PI when I enlisted, and I said, "Well, I guess I'll write her a note and see what happens. I probably never will hear."
Yeah.
But I did, and by God, I heard, and went from there on, and we got married in 1946, and May of 46, and 24th, and we had 65 years of marriage.
And I know you said you never even had never a real disagreement.
No. People might say, but I'll tell you something. It was never one of those real, what you call, deep down disagreements. She might give me the devil because I didn't think to get the rubbish out in time, or something like that. Or she might say, "Well, how come you were so late getting home from refereeing last night when the game was over at such and such a time?" And kiddingly, you know, and she knew what happened with Verge and I, so Verge Smith, my buddy. Yeah.
Okay, well, it was, as always, it was great having you on the show, but it was such an honor to have been able to finally help you make your dream come true. And as again, to the viewers, if you are a World War II veteran, or if you have a loved one who is, feel free to contact actually Joe or I.
That's right.
And we're both in the phone book.
Yeah.
And
for some reason or other, they didn't put me in the new phone book.
oh, they're not.
But
What's
anyway,
your phone number, Joe, if you want it?
Derby line is 873-3281.
Right. And mine is 802-272-2030. And either one of us will answer questions about. We'll try to connect you to the proper person, but it's a one-in-a-lifetime experience.
I want to say thank you for seeing that I got to go on that trip.
Right.
Because
Well,
you knew how much I wanted to go, and you were great. It was just so good, and I won't forget it.
oh, I appreciate it, and I'm hoping you're around many, many more years, because you are a member of the greatest generation.
Well, I guess. You know, I was looking at the pictures the other day, and the one of you and I standing by the tree at the hospital yard the day I picked you up,
Yeah,
and then the one of you and I over at your daughter's.
yeah.
And we had a nice big old Sam Adams in our
Yeah.
hand. We had a Sam Adams, all right. So, and then from there on, and you knew more too, but I just to this day, and I tell people I cannot get over the reception that we got.
I knew we were doing stuff along the way,
Yeah.
but I'd be lying if I told you it was going to be that.
Yeah.
I'd be, there's
Well,
no way.
it
I
was-
had no idea.
It's just to this day even, it was so, I mean, when you walk into a building like that and so many people there, and you're figuring maybe 15 or 20 people were going to greet you, and then, but the pictures tell the story.
And those
yeah.
weren't paid people. Those were people
Oh, no.
who,
No,
these
no, no.
Patriot Guards.
They
those
were there,
guys-
they wanted to be there.
Right.
And I just, and then another thing I found, when you gave me the list on the bus of the people who came in on the
Oh, on Facebook.
Facebook.
Yeah, because
The
I
number
post,
of people that called in, came in on it to wish me well and all this, and the young lad there, he said, well, I played ball for you back in 1950, and so, things like that, they mean something at this stage in the game.
what he's talking about is on Facebook. I posted. I said, "Do you have a message for Joe and during his travel?" And there was dozens and dozens of people.
57, I think, on that one
Was
sheet.
it? Yeah, one sheet, and
Yeah,
then there was others, and then, as you said, is some people come out of the woodwork that you haven't seen for decades.
I think there was, I don't know how many now, there was a couple of three on there that said, you don't know me and I don't know you, but
Yeah.
they wanted me to have a good trip and hopefully we'll have.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on, and we'll see what our next wild adventure will bring
Well,
to us.
Thanks for having me down, because I like to try to express to the people there's more to that trip than what you read.
Oh, sure.
And till you experience it, you just can't tell. And I'm just hoping those that can go later on, like Don and Danny, if Danny goes with them, and whoever goes, I just hope they get as much out of it as I did, and it gives them as much joy. 'Cause when I saw the military people in the airport, some of the Navy, the Army, the Marine Corps, who were waiting to go, different branches come up and shake your hand like they did, and the people themselves, and they just were so sincere about it. It wasn't just and
Right.
supposedly the bikers can always have a spot in my heart.
Oh, yeah.
And I have told the people that I've talked with that the Patriot bikers, I think it's a Patriot.
Yep, the Patriot
right,
Guard, yep.
Right. I said they are something again, and they are sincere people.
Oh, yeah, they were
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you
again.
very much, Scott.
And thank
very
you
much.
to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.